Winning that ticket, Rose, was the best thing that ever happened to me. It brought me to you.
Titanic.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Axis Cinema Appreciation, a spin-off of the Let's Talk Movies podcast with John and David. I am John. That is David, a.k.a. Shamrock Balls. And today here on the channel, we are going to be talking about Titanic, which is a 1997 Best Picture winner. But we're also talking a little bit about the ship itself and all things Titanic. Right, David?
Yeah. Obviously this is primarily a movie podcast. So the main focus obviously will be James Cameron's Titanic. But, you know, you wouldn't have the movie, John, if it wasn't for Jim Cameron's fascination with this real life ship.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it was a pretty big deal for him to actually go down there and explore the Titanic wreckage, which maybe you can help me with the years on all of this. Was it around that time when they first discovered the wreckage of the Titanic?
No, and do you know what? Even though I am a wee bit of a Titanic aficionado, my daughter's currently doing a project on the Titanic, and I helped her do the Titanic timeline, so I know exactly when they discovered the Titanic. It was the 1st of September, 1985.
Ah, okay. 1 year after the Terminator. So I wonder if that's when Big Jim got the itch to go down there.
I think I heard him say he did when they finally discovered it. But as I say, yeah, I personally, for me, John, this is another movie that I've had a bit of a history with. So you're noticing the pattern here with the movies we're doing. My earliest memory of the Titanic was I was a small child and I was I've got a child. No, I was
Billy
just
Zane.
Billy Zane of a child. I modeled my haircut after Billy Zane.
He is a good-looking bald guy, just like yourself.
Oh, the eyebrows. Anyway, but you know, I remember being home from school one day with my mum and watching this old black and white movie about the Titanic, and her telling me, you know, it was a true story, and I was fascinated by this. This must have been like the 80s, and I'm not sure which one it was. I have a funny feeling it was like the 1953 one. I think there's one that came out like in the 50s, but there was another one that came out called A Night to Remember. So I'm not sure which one it was, but I think it was the older one, because I always remember I was captured by, while watching this movie, my mum telling me what was happening, really, that not everybody was going to survive, that people were going to die, and the men had to stay behind. And I always remember the vision of this movie I was watching. That's what makes me think it wasn't A Night to Remember, of the ship just sliding into the ocean while all the men, you know, stood on the deck like this or something, you know, and the band playing behind them and stuff like that. And that memory kind of stuck with me for a load of years. And then in the early 90s, we had the History Channel on Sky Movie or Sky Television, and they were advertising this Emmy Award-winning 2-part Titanic documentary. And I remember coming home from school and watching the first part one evening, and then the second part the second evening. And that's when I became fascinated with the Titanic. And that Christmas, I actually asked my mom and dad for a model of the Titanic to build, and well, from Santa. And I got that model, a model of the Titanic to build, but it was like an adult model, and I'd never built a model before. So I started it, and then I finished, and then and then a few years later, this movie came out, and it just caught the world by storm, and it was a phenomenon. And then that gave me the bug, and I took 2 weeks off work sick. And I took the 2 weeks and I finished the whole model. So I did. So that was kind of like my fascination with Titanic. I had a fascination even before the movie came out. And I think this movie really created a lot of fascination for people. But the likes of James Cameron, I think his fascination started obviously before that, and that enticed him to want to make the film.
Yeah, which makes sense. For me, it's very different because I guess that'll just show our age gap, because I was not aware of the Titanic when the movie came out, because This movie came out. I was 5 going on 6, but I didn't see it till it was on VHS, so I was already 6 years old. And I can remember very well the 2-part VHS, renting it from Blockbuster. And actually, it's one of the rare films I remember my dad actually buying the double VHS and having it in his house. But I watched it with my mom over at her house because my parents are divorced. And being young, I didn't really care too much about the love story in it, but I was fascinated by the ship. Actually, really did kind of draw me into like a lifetime fascination, not just like with shipwrecks, but plane crashes and how these like commercial kind of flights or like cruise ships, how like something like this could even happen. And like like this is like a disaster to the point that 1,500 people out of 2,200 people died and perished. And like it's like you can't even believe like something that could even come to fruition. So I became fascinated with the ship itself. And I've told this story, but I don't know if people on this channel have heard it, but
I know it's coming.
I wanted for Christmas that year, I wanted the Titanic VHS because I loved watching the movie, and like we'd always just rent it. And my mom just assumed, well, he's seen Titanic, he must be a fan of boats, like not understanding. And she bought me Speed 2 Cruise Control on VHS, which I will admit that I've watched many a times, and I enjoy the film just because nostalgia at this point. It's not a good movie though.
Yeah.
Not
Is
like Titanic.
there a love story in it?
There is a love story between Jason Patrick, who we were just talking about a little bit earlier off camera, and Sandra Bullock. They replaced Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves didn't do Speed 2 because he wanted to do the Devil's Advocate.
Ah, right. Okay. Well, the funny thing there is as well is that when I started kind of like becoming fascinated, but I think that the documentary that I watched in the early 90s, that was a brilliant documentary. That was the one that kind of really made me fascinated by this. As people know, if anybody watches the podcast, obviously I like to mention it in nearly every podcast, is that I'm a big Jaws fan. Jaws is my favorite movie. Did you not know that, John?
I was not aware.
So this movie made me fascinated with sharks and the ocean and things like that. I was very fascinated with that. And then when you see a story about the Titanic, I used to watch like shark documentaries, and there was a guy on that. There's a guy who's was the first shark documentary I ever got on VHS one Christmas in the early 90s. Oh God, do you know what? His name is actually eluding me at the minute. He was one of the pioneers to study the great white shark, and he went on then to study all different types of weird marine life that haven't been discovered before, like in the 60s and the 70s and things like that. And there was footage of him on this documentary of him going down to like Japanese warships that were sank during World War II and finding skulls and things like that, but he actually features in this movie at the start. He's in one of the mini subs. I can't think of his name at the minute. It'll come to me. It might come to me. The fact was that with me watching those type of documentaries and then watching that Emmy Award-winning Titanic documentary, I just have this fascination then with the Titanic and underwater life and stuff like that. And of course, I love history as well. So the whole kind of background to the Titanic, the romanticized version of the Titanic, of all these different people, all their different stories, whether you're first class, second class, third class, it doesn't matter anymore. It's all out the window because they're all fighting for their lives, and how kind of like as well that, the heroics of some of the people on that ship to save lives from the crew, and civilians as well. It just captures my whole imagination. And then, of course, when I was watching this documentary, I don't know if my mum had told me this when I was really young, you find out that the ship was actually built in Belfast, which is like my home city, where I was born and raised and grew up, and all my family are here. And I think I mentioned to you off camera as well, John, that my grandfather actually worked in the shipyard. So he did. So there's that link to it, having this city that you were actually born and raised in, having a link to this ship, and then having this kind of connection to it that way. And, kind of like, what would you say, fascination of thinking that the ship was actually here at one stage. And I've said to you, John, that you can go down to, it's called the Titanic Quarter, and you can visit where they actually built the ship. They still have the dock there, The shipyard's still there as well, and they have the dry dock of where it was built. It's called the Thompson Dock, and they have the old drawing offices. They're all still there as well, as far as I'm aware. And in the last 10, 15 years, they've actually built like a Titanic attraction and stuff down in the city. So I have that connection to it as well, which also made me even more fascinated with the ship and the lore. And I believe as well outside Belfast City Hall they have a Titanic statue, like a memorial that's been there for decades, dedicated to the people that lost their lives on the ship.
Must be a big memorial with the amount of people that lost their lives. I was going to ask you because obviously the opening of the film would be Northern Ireland when they show the ship at the shipyard. Like, does it actually look like that? Because that's like a very romanticized kind of version of it. Like, it's like kind of a beautiful sunny day. You got the ship there, and like everything looks kind of pristine. Does it actually kind of look like that, or did it look like that at the time?
Well, Ireland, because that was before partition.
That's right, because that was in the 1920s. So it was just Ireland in 1912.
1812.
Although they mentioned in the ship, like they sailed off from Northern Ireland, which I guess it's in the north.
Well, the thing is, when you're talking about the actual movie where you see the ship docked, that's Southampton. That's England.
Oh, that's actually England?
That's England. So the ship was built in Belfast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they done all the trials and stuff in Belfast Lock. So they did. Off the coast here. And then it went to, I think there was a myth that it was fitted out in Liverpool and stuff like this internally. It never even went to Liverpool. It says Liverpool on the back, on the stern of the boat, because that's where the White Star Line headquarters are.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so it went straight from here to Southampton. So would you see the boat at the start of the movie? That's the pier at Southampton, because that's another one of their, like, I think that's where they're I'm not sure, but they might have had a headquarters there as well. But I think the main headquarters was in Liverpool, as far as I'm aware. So that's why it says Liverpool on the back. People think it was built in Liverpool because it says Liverpool on the back of it. It doesn't. It wasn't. It didn't even go near Liverpool. So it went to Southampton, and on its maiden voyage, it left from Southampton. It went to Cherbourg in France to pick people up, and then it went to Queenstown in the south of Ireland, the very south of Ireland, which is now Cork City. And that's where that was its last stop, and that's where it took off for its maiden voyage. But it was that big of a ship; it couldn't. Some of these stops, it actually couldn't get to the shore, so they used a smaller ship to ferry people, a smaller boat to ferry people from the land to the ship, and it was called the Nomadic. And about, I don't know, so many years ago there, Belfast Council or whoever it was bought the Nomadic. It was falling apart. It still existed, and they bought it, and then they done it all up, and it's sitting down at the lagoon down there, and you can visit that as well.
Ah, interesting. That's all. I see. This is all stuff why I need you here for that, because I did not know all that. Because I'm just going by mostly I've Wikipedia'd it, and obviously it's documentaries that are on. Now you can watch it all in 4K Blu-ray. Which, by the way, did you enjoy the 4K?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I did really enjoy it. I thought the colors were very vibrant. And that 4K is the first time I watched it. But you're saying about Wiki and stuff, yeah, I will say like Northern Ireland because that's where it's placing it now. But back then, like even when I was doing helping out with me the timeline for my daughter's project, it just said Belfast, Ireland in it, and that's why, because that was technically the name back then. That whole even the opening of the movie when it's in sepia tone and stuff like that, that's Southampton. That's where it's leaving Southampton. There is footage of it sitting in Belfast. You can actually find old footage of it sitting on the dock at the dock after its launch. And then what actually happened was that the Olympic was one of the sister ships that get the captain of the Titanic was ferrying that and crashed it.
Oh, well, so he's got a history of this.
And he brought it back. They had to bring that back to repair it, right? And they were still building the Titanic at the time, so that kind of delayed the Titanic's maiden voyage. So if he hadn't have crashed the Olympic, the maiden voyage may have been, I don't know, earlier. and they might have missed the ice that was drifting down in the Atlantic, and he wouldn't have hit it, wouldn't have crashed it. So there you go. But there's actually pictures. You can see, I mean, there's loads of photographs of the ship being constructed. There's photographs, or you can see the Titanic sitting beside the Olympic in the dry docks, the Lagan in Belfast. You can actually see it,
And just one last question about like the guy who designed the ship. Was he Irish? I know in the movie, I don't think they portray him as an Irishman. Mr. Andrews, very recognizable face. But like, since that guy designed the ship, was it designed in Ireland, or was it just somebody who drew it up and somewhere else and designed it, and they just built it in Ireland?
No,
Oh
no,
no.
it was all designed and built in Ireland. All of it
Okay,
was.
so
You're
that guy.
talking about, yeah. So you're sorry. You're talking about Thomas Andrews. So
Yeah.
Thomas Andrews in the movie. Yes, I believe that actor's Canadian.
Yes,
I
he's Canadian. He's in a bunch of stuff. Like he's a very recognizable, like that guy.
Yeah, I know his face. Yeah, and he's a likable guy, and he's trying to do an Irish accent. But the guy, I think I mentioned we were talking about this, and I says, every time, well, not every time, a lot of the times when they do movies about people from the north of Ireland, and when I say the north, I even mean like Donegal, which is in like the Republic of Ireland, who sound very much like us in the north. I mean, every time they try and portray an Irish person in a movie, they sound like they're from Dublin or County Cork. They're saying 33. You know what I mean? We don't talk like that. So Thomas Andrews was from a place called Comber, just outside Belfast. But he resided in Belfast. I think he may have lived in South Belfast. And I think his family, his family was Lord Parry or somebody like that. But they were they made it, he was Irish. He was born here, so he was, and he helped design it and he helped construct it. Yeah.
Okay,
So
I was
yeah.
curious because he's it's not a great Irish accent, no offense. Like he's doing it in the
No,
movie.
it's not great, and I also that's what I'm saying. I feel as if he's trying to do like a southern kind of Irish accent a bit. You know what I mean? But it's he would, to be honest, if he was here now, he would sound more like me than what that guy does in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah.
supposed to be 1912. I gotta always remember that, like, so people just sounded different. I mean, but hey, I appreciate all that information because, like, I feel like, I'm not really an expert on that end. I'm a little bit more of an expert on the film, so obviously we're also here to talk about that. And this movie came out in December of 1997 after a very troubled production, actually, from what I understand. Like,
Mhm.
a lot of people expected this to be a failure. Like, they kind of expect every James Cameron film to be a failure for some reason, and then sure enough, it ends up becoming the highest grossing film of all time. And correct me if I'm wrong, did this knock off the last film that we talked about on the Let's Talk Movies podcast, Jurassic Park, is the highest grossing film of all time?
It did, yes, John. In fact, I touched on that in our last episode of the Let's Talk Movies podcast, where we're done Jurassic Park, where we were talking about the Lost World, and I remember the hype for the Lost World was on the news about the anticipation of the Lost World coming out, and they actually were predicting it was going to be the first $1 billion movie. And it didn't break that. It didn't even beat the original Jurassic Park. But then this movie came later in the year, and this became the first $1 billion movie. But yes, I mean, this movie, there's so much hype around this movie. And I went to see this movie, I don't know, like several times in the cinema, maybe like 3 times. And I was like you. Like the first time I was kind of like enthralled by the whole movie, right? But then when you go back and watch it again, I just couldn't wait for the sinking. That for me was that was the bit I wanted to go for. You know what I mean? I wanted to go for the whole sinking part of the movie. And so you're sitting there for the first like hour and 20 minutes going, when's this going to hit the iceberg? Come on, hurry up. You know what I mean? And I even remember like getting in to watch it, and when it started, I expected just like, unlike Jurassic Park, where I was quite happy it was a modern day. When this started and they're down looking at the wreck and all, I was going, I hope this is actually gonna go back and show you the sink. And I was like, is this just gonna be all about Damon's going through this ship and trying to salvage something? That's what I actually thought. And when they eventually go back, I was like, brilliant. Here we go. They're gonna start telling the actual story, because that's what I wanted to see.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because anytime I watch this movie, I always forget that they open on Bill Paxton in that part of the movie. Like it's and no offense to anyone who's a part of that with the acting and obviously the older Rose, but it's just it's a lot more forgettable than that once we get on the ship. Now, like they start
Yeah.
hinting at it right away. Like, we'll get some like little cool transitions. Like we'll see parts of the ship all sunk, and then like they'll transition to the actual, like the doors are closed and they're all underneath the water, and then they transition to like look like brand new and pristine, which is, I love those kinds of things. They do it a lot throughout the movie where we see it. But it's just like I find that stuff like it's almost like just showing us the history, which again, like for me at the time, I was not aware of this, and they show the whole sinking and what caused it, and explain
Mhm.
how this is what happened, and the compartments all filled up, and even Mr. Andrews explains like it's built for four, but for five, it will sink. And like the first time you watch the movie, and the first few times, and this time especially, like it's a very layered movie. Like I guess you can
Mhm.
watch it for the romance, you can watch it for the sinking, but what really struck me this time, and I guess it's just where I am in my life, is the actual, and it's always there, it's not like it's not noticeable, is the showing of the differences in the classes. That's like kind of
Oh,
what
yeah.
it frustrated me this time. Like it actually pissed me off. Like it never pissed me off before, because I guess you just get wrapped up in other things, but because I've seen this movie, I mean, I couldn't put a number on it so many times. It's
Yeah.
like, I guess you just start focusing on something different, and that was the things that really stood out to me this time around.
Yeah. Well, first of all, what you're saying there about the transitions and stuff like that, and again, I'm the same as you. I've seen this movie so many times over the years because, like, I loved seeing it in the cinema, and then eventually when I built my model and stuff like that, listening to the soundtrack, you know what I mean, rewatching the movie when I got it. I remember getting the VHS actually for my mum because I was too embarrassed to buy it for myself because of the love story and give it to her. And I think I watched it more than her. But only because of a fascination with the Titanic. But and then when you sit down to watch it to do this show and you're really paying attention and stuff that you just take for granted, like even at the start before old Rose comes into it, when they're going along the actual Titanic, or well, the sunken Titanic, and they're going along, you can see like windows open and maybe doors lying open and things like that, and wreckage and things, and you can actually hear faint in the background the commotion of the of the people that were actually fighting for their lives that night, but you're not seeing anything yet. You're just hearing it, and I think that's like Cameron conditioning you, you know, for what's to come later on. And it's the same as you say when he's doing those transitions when Rose comes into it, and then you're seeing the footage on the television, and you're going through, and you can hear the music playing and stuff like that. My favorite transition would have to be when she is on the bow with Jack, and it's the sunset, and then that kind of CGI transitions into inside the ship, the Discovery ship, or the what do you call that ship they're on?
Don't remember the name of the actual boat that they're on, but like,
It's
yeah, like the main kind of hub boat from that all the
a
submarines are going off.
Yeah, I think it's a Russian one. And but yeah, but you see the camera kind of swings around. It's one shot, and she's looking back at the bow, and then she kind of turns around. But you can hear the rest of the cast narrating what's gonna happen. And watching it again the other night, I was like, that's an amazing transition where him and her kind of turn into like ghosts in a kind of way, as the ship is kind of like turned into a ghost ship, and then kind of transitions to her looking and then turning around, and you can hear demons, and then it brings you back to the drawn scene in her cabin. But by that stage, like, you kind of forget that she's telling this story because you're just so wrapped up in it. So you are. Um, what was the other thing you had said there, John? I was going to make a point on
I
as
was
well.
talking about the classes, and actually has a really
Yes.
one of cool transitions as well, which is like, I really noticed it when they come up there to tell, like, Billy Zane and Rose and everything. Billy Zane and the mom and everyone, like they come in there all nice and classy, like, oh, it's just a precaution. Here's your life vest. Maybe you put a coat on, a top hat. The guys being all nice with the first class passengers. Meanwhile, all the passengers on the lower decks, the guy comes slamming in the room. All right, put your life vests on. Get up there. Like basically, get the
Yes.
fuck up there if you don't want to die. Like, and he's just going room to room, tossing it on the floor. It's just like
Yeah.
how they even treat these people in third
Yeah.
class to how they treat the people in first class. And obviously, we see they literally lock them down there. They don't give a shit. And it's
Yeah.
just like all that stuff was just making me so frustrated this time around.
Yeah, that's right. They busting and go, put your life jackets on. Come on, get up. Put your life jackets on. And as you say, up in the other, the first class, you hear her saying, go back and put the heater on my room. I want a cup of tea when I go back. It's just a precaution. It'll be fine. You'll be back in your room in an hour, miss. And all this. And one of the things I actually loved about the class, and you're right, when watching it again, it almost feels as if, to be honest with you, John, I almost felt as if Cameron was hitting me over the head with it though, But maybe it's
It
because
does feel a little much, but it's like I also didn't necessarily notice that as like a driving force all the other time. So it's like
yeah.
maybe like where you are in your life, you focus on different things. Like I said, when I was a kid, I liked The Wreckage. I never really was a big fan of the romance, but I do feel like back in 1997, and I feel like a lot of people felt this way, it was kind of like a date movie. And that's a big reason why I made so much money is because the romance, obviously Leonardo
Yeah.
DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, like, they're these idols. They're both young, handsome, and beautiful actor and actress. And like, that's like they're on the cover of the magazines, and like that's what people are going to see Titanic for. But then then you said like you were embarrassed almost like because it's a love story. But I think as a film fan, also you're there and thinking like, look how well made this movie is.
Oh yeah, 100%. And one thing I want to mention first is I was gonna say this to you, bring this up to you, was the lane talk about the classes. This epitomizes it as well. When Jack and Fabrizio they win the tickets, and they're nearly gonna miss the ship leaving, and he goes running up the gunway to the door, or the gunwale, is it gunwale it's called? And they're just about to close the door, and he says, hold on," and he says, "There's your tickets," and he says, "There are tickets to get on," and the crew member says, "Have you been through the inspection queue?" And Leonardo DiCaprio says, "We don't have lace. We're Americans." And he looks back and goes, "Both of us are." And he's like, "All right, then go ahead." So does that get you on? Because you're from America, you don't have lace, you can get on.
Yeah, of course. I guess we're always just considered cleaner than other people, which is, I can attest that is not true.
Well, I didn't believe that anyway. That it's just a case of it's just how things are perceived,
Mhm.
obviously. But yes, you were saying about the romance there in the movie. I always remember James Cameron because this has became a pet hate of mine over the years, to be honest, about this film, right? Is this fictionalized version of events.
Mhm.
And it didn't bother me for years, it's just such a great movie and such a great yarn. And then in later years when you there's so many great stories about the Titanic, and one of my favorite Titanic movies, which I then visited in later years, was A Night to Remember, which is based on a very famous book called A Night to Remember, and it tells you the story of the sinking through the people that were there. And I'm like, well, why not do that? Why concoct this totally kind of like you know um fictional story within this real life tragedy when there's so many great kind of real life stories you could tell about people that were there. And I remember Cameron in an interview saying that was the hook. When he went into the studio, he said Romeo and Juliet on a boat, and that sold it to the studio. And he says the only way he could get the audience invested in the story was to create two fictional characters that they could root for. And the only way he thought he could do it was through a love story. So from that point of view, I understand. And another thing that kind of bothered me the last time was wasn't not this time, but last time I watched this movie was this constant kind of drama that's going on between Jack and Rose and Carl, and how he's chasing them through the ship and shooting at them and all this business. I'm just like, is there not enough going on already without having this going on? But I think part of the reason why Cameron wanted to do it was because a lot of Titanic movies, they show you what's happening on the deck, and we've seen that a few times before. We could see that in movies sinking ships where we see what's happening on the decks. We very rarely see what's happening underneath the ship. We very rarely see how the water's destroying all that beautiful architecture inside the ship. And I like to think that's why he done it. That's why he kept putting them back in under the decks, is because he wanted to show how the ship was sinking from the inside.
Yeah, and I actually do love all those elements because it's something that you don't ever really see. Maybe Poseidon Adventure, you might have seen things like that a little bit, but it's very rarely seen. And honestly, all that stuff is so fascinating to me anyway. Like them being underneath and watching, like how the ship is starting to go down and like how the water is traveling and how quick it's coming up and how much time they have. It's like a ticking clock at all times. We know how long it takes from beginning to end, from the time they hit the iceberg to the time it starts to eventually fully go underneath the water. We know all that before the even story starts. But yeah, the Billy Zane character, he's sometimes feels like, in a different movie. Like he's a little bit he's overacting quite a bit. I even Faith watching it last night said like when when he pulls the gun out, it's like it's unnecessary. Like they're gonna all die anyway, and it's like this guy's like, I'm gonna shoot him, like over what? Like you don't really seem to necessarily love her. It's just like you almost like it's like another possession to you. And it's like I get that. And it just it shows the flaws a little bit in James Cameron, who wrote this movie. And I think his writing is never really as well as his direction. Like I think that he's like a phenomenal director, but when it comes to writing, he almost relies heavily on tropes, and the romance is very, very tropey and has some flaws in it, in my opinion. Like I always think like, and without sounding like a hypocrite, because it's not the first time he's ever done basically a couple day love story. I mean, the Terminator has Kyle Reese and and Linda Hamilton. The two of them, Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, they're like, even though it was only one night, we loved for a lifetime. It's like, people move on. I don't. You never got to see the flaws in each other. And this woman, 84 years, like has a whole family, and still like I haven't talked about him, but he's still the greatest thing that ever happened in my entire life. And it's just like, really, like you haven't, like but you don't talk about it for like you just see some holes there that kind of drag the movie down to like being one of the best James Cameron films to being like still underneath a few of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, it's kind of like, I think Terminator 2, and Aliens are above this for me. But like, does he ever think, John, maybe, she's lying about the whole thing?
Well, like it's funny because they don't really believe her like at first, and then like she sways them all about it because it's such a good story, like but it's like she never told her granddaughter. It's like you didn't talk about this guy who you took his last name right there, like ever again, even though we see through the pictures that she lived the life that he told her to live, which makes sense. Like you got to survive this night that not many people did, live that life, and she lived to be, because by my math she should be 102 years old there, which good for her. Not most people don't get to live that long. But of course then we have the running thing, because again with the with the heart of the sea, the necklace, and always people now have kind of villainized her for dropping it in the ocean, because it's like,
I hear that.
You didn't get it from him. You got it from fucking Cal.
I know. She's a very old goddamn liar. But just go back to what you're saying about the ship. Just circling back that, one of the things that I actually loved as well seeing in this, and fascinated me in seeing in this, was over the years they always depicted the stern sticking out of the water. That's the famous pictures you always seen. You always seen the stern. And what actually that I loved about this was that Cameron's, taking the time, as you say, to show the stages of the ship sinking. And I almost feel as if, it took how long to take the ship to sink? I'm not sure.
2 hours and 44 minutes, I believe.
Something like that, yeah. So the ship, it's an hour and a half in, isn't it? So you've got about an hour and a half before it sinks in this. I thought maybe he had synced it up. But the whole thing is that I loved when he showed the bow slowly get into the water. Or you know what I mean, and all that water coming over the side, and the captain coming up on the bridge and watching over as it's just going down. I mean, what's going through your mind there? And I think that was intentional, because when you actually go and visit the wreck, the tracks that they follow that bring you to the wreck brings you to the bow of the ship. That's the most recognizable part of the wreck, is the bow. I think that the whole kind of like mechanics of how he made the movie, how he kind of like built like I think it was like a 1/3, or is it 2/3? Sorry, 2/3 scaled replica of the actual ship on one side of it, so you could film on all that. And then what he done was, if he needed the other side of the ship, I think he done the port side, which is the left, and if he needed the starboard side, he would. What I do was we film it and it just flip the film around. So everybody had to be wearing, if you had writing on like the crew had writing on their hats, like saying Titanic, they had to have it round the opposite way. So when they flipped the film, it came up the right way. So there was all that kind of like trickery that he was doing there. As I mentioned in the Jurassic Park episode, John, that I feel as if Jurassic Park is a perfect example of using practical and CGI, and I feel as if, for me, in my mind, Titanic is the next great one to do it.
I agree with that 100%, because like when you're watching like where all the water is and how the water is coming in. Like all that stuff looks seamless. It looks perfect. Like, and you just could imagine like these people being on the ship, and then also like the lights exploding and all the electricity. Like it doesn't look like CGI. It looks everything looks like it's practically done. I mean, the ice coming on the ship as they hit the iceberg, like you can tell a little bit like the iceberg's probably CGI because
Yeah.
it has to be. But like, but even like just that little moment of tension, like obviously we know it's going to hit the iceberg, but because it's such good film making, you're like waiting for it to turn. It's like maybe it won't hit it this time. It's going to
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
hit it. But like the score underneath too is doing that. Like it's all just such a great moment in the film. And then like, I just love all their reactions. Like it's like, they don't like necessarily grasp it. Like this is that's what's gonna kill them all. It's like almost like, oh, okay, we hit an iceberg, and it's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But the tension in that moment, and then obviously that's gonna just escalate from this moment on. That's why I think it's kind of cool. That's where the first VHS ended and the second one started. It's like first they hit the iceberg at the end of the first one. And then the second one is just that's it. Now we're really kind of locked in on the sinking of this ship, and of course we still have the love story going on of them finding each other, and they do go up and down the ship a couple of times. So I think he wanted to show the floors.
Every time they're out, they're back in again.
Yeah.
But as you were saying, they're just said about the VHS stopping and Thomas Andrews explaining then, about what's going to happen.
I love that, by the way. It's such a great, even though it's exposition, the way it's delivered is, oh my God, I love it. She will sink. Like, I just,
she's made of iron, sir. I assure you, Titanic will founder.
From this moment, no matter what we do, Titanic will founder.
And obviously, Esme saying, Bruce J. Esme saying, she can't sink. God herself cannot sink this ship. But that whole scene, as you say, about that whole scene of them hitting the iceberg is my favorite scene in the whole movie. It's my favorite part of the score. It's, as you say, the anticipation of, turn, and it just... It's gonna hit! Then just the whole action. One thing about Cameron is he's such a great director of action. And I don't get tired of ever watching that scene. And when they finally hit the iceberg and all that water starts flooding in, especially when it hits the boiler rooms and they're just going everywhere.
Those poor bastards, man.
Oh yeah, trapped down there as well, and the steam raising from it putting out the what do you call the furnaces and stuff like that. It's sublime. And as you say, people as well, this is a historic movie, even though it's fiction mixed with fact. And that's what I was going to say to you. But even though, listen, it's a great movie. I don't want to take anything away from it. I love Titanic. But, even though we have this fictional story going on with like Rose and Jack and Carl and, and her family and stuff like that, and this kind of deceit that she's got to marry him because her family's now broke and they don't want to ruin the good name and all this nonsense. But throughout the whole movie, these fictional characters are interacting with real life characters. And Cameron is actually putting parts of real life events in those scenes, like when Jack steals the coat, when the wee boy's playing the game on the poop deck. That was an actual photograph on the but I'm not sure if it was on the Titanic or it was on the Olympic, but it was an actual photograph of that man and that child playing that game and the coat hanging. And they worked out who it was, and then they put it into the movie that he stole the coat. We nods like that, you see the likes of
Kathy Bates' character too is a real character.
The unsinkable Molly Brown. You have Guggenheim. You have what do you call the Strausses who owned what's the big famous store in New York?
Oh my God! Yeah,
Pennies.
I should know that. Yeah,
Pennies.
I believe that's the name of it. You could be right.
They owned that. That was a true story that she wouldn't leave him. And then you have John Jacob Astor as well.
100%. Like they do put these real characters interacting with our fictional characters, which is clever because I mean I guess like you said, like I guess to get the movie made you had to have the love story be the driving force. That's the characters we're following, but they were always going to be interacting with real characters as well. And I also love the actual humanity at the very like in the third act of the ship sinking and how people are reacting, like the way that the band actually played and like like almost like people dying with honor. Like, you know, like it's almost like people just wouldn't do that. Yes, there are people panicking, and who wouldn't panic? Like, you know, that's a human thing to do. But people like on the actual ship, like just being like who work for the ship, like, no, this is what I do. Like the captain walking in there, and I love him walking to the room, and like, you know, people are coming up to him still, and he's just like walking to his death literally, and how he's just kind of like walking past them, and like where his head is. And I love all those aspects of this movie as well, even though I know we have to always circle back to the love story, and the way we even have to wrap it up at the end with fucking throwing the thing in the water. Like, you know, like I know we have to do all that. It's just that like those other moments in there are just so well done. And then of course I love the score.
Yeah, well, first of all, just wrapping up on some of them other characters, like, nobody knows what actually happened to Captain Smith. So that's a wee bit of an artistic license there. But you're right about where his headspace is, because this is his fault. The weight of this is on his shoulders. And sometimes I feel as if there's a rewriting of kind of like history and stuff. We hear these reports that he died saving a baby. Somebody with his description was seen in when the ship went down, swimming up with a baby and putting it on board and then swimming off, and this, pretty stiff upper lip, you know what I mean? But nobody really knows what happened to him. But for the purposes of the movie, I like the way they end with him. But even at Guggenheim, I like where he walks in with what he says, we're dressed in our best and we're prepared to go down like men. And he says, "Can I get down and just get me a whiskey or a brandy or something like that?"
Brandy, yeah.
Brandy. But when he's sitting in the chair and that water starts coming up the steps, and you see how terrified he is. I mean, that's genuinely scary. I remember being terrified in the cinema watching that, John. And of course, when that ship finally, this is the thing that actually got me more than anything when I watched this in the cinema, right? Right at the end, not the very end, when the ship goes under. Like usually when you watch Titanic movies, the ship goes under and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Or it cuts to the next day and the people that survived are being rescued by the Carpathia, right? Yeah. Vigo the Carpathian. The Titanic's just arrived. But what got me in the cinema with this was as soon as that ship went under the waves, like you're sitting in the cinema and it was like, you're in darkness. And the ships went down, the lights went out in the ship, but the ships went down, and it was like the screen was almost dark as well. And all you could hear was all the people in the water screaming for their lives, freezing to death, And that was very eerie. And one of the things that really kind of like, spooked me as well was that when they went back for to see if there was any survivors, the amount of like bodies just floating in the water, froze, dead. I mean, that's something that nobody really talks about or you'd seen before in like a documentary about the Titanic. Or I mean, you could go back, of course, and look for it. If you go and look for like the investigation afterwards, this is where they're getting this from. This is where the testimony's coming from. But it's something that I wasn't too aware of in 97 when this movie came out. Or was it 98, 97? 97.
December. So basically, you probably saw it in 98.
I probably seen it in early 98. So this was something that's kind of spooked me. But I'm thankful that was shown in the movie to show how terrible this was, what happened to these people. And of course, as you say, I know you mentioned the score, but one thing I want to say first is when you do go to the end of the movie and you see that she lived the life that her and Jack talked about doing, because he says you're going to grow old, you're going to have loads of babies and never give up, and that's what gave her the strength to be rescued in the end. And I love how they go back to like the Russian ship and they're all sitting there crying. That's one thing I noticed in the 4K. You can see the tears all down their eyes.
Yeah, oh my God, they're listening to this great story that they're saying. Got him.
It's a wee bit cheesy, but the whole thing is at the end where he says you're going to die warm in your bed as an old woman, and that's basically her dying.
That night she dies.
Yes, at the end. And I love that how she goes down to the ship and then it goes along one of the decks and it transitions into the main staircase. And I believe, I could be wrong here, but I believe that everybody in that room are the ones that died.
in that actual room.
No, not in the actual room, on the ship,
Oh, actually on the ship.
because you can see Tommy's there.
Yeah, and obviously the
Chat.
last person she sees is like
Tom
Mr. Andrews before she turns
uh,
around to Leo.
Andrews is there. You see watch it again. See if you watch this again, John. You notice what's another smart thing Cameron does. There's certain characters that later on you see who die. They're inserted throughout the movie. Like the woman who the Welsh I think it was Lowe you called him. I can't remember his name. The Welsh crew member who's going. Is there anybody there? Can
Oh,
anybody hear me?
yeah,
Um,
that's the most haunting thing to me. It's like that when they're out there with the flashlight and the way it's echoed and everything. Oh my god, that's scary because it's like the way that he has the audio. It's like that one voice.
but he pulls one of the um passengers out of the water, and she's froze with a baby in her arms. You see her earlier in the movie. There's characters that you see, but so some of them characters are there when she goes in at the end. It's all the ones that died, you know, but not all of them. You know what I mean? Because there was like 1,500 or something. But a lot of them who died, you see them in there. And you're just saying about the score. I absolutely love that score at the end as well. That's playing
Oh,
throughout that scene.
that's actually, I think, my favorite. I was trying to go through what my favorite piece of music is, but I think that's probably my favorite piece of music. But I mean, I honestly just love the entire score. It's rising up one of my favorite scores of all time. And we've talked about this on previous shows. If you guys have watched, like how James Horner kind of got this job because he worked with James Cameron previously, but it was really the score from Braveheart, which is very similar to this.
Mhm. Yeah, well, do you know what? When I've touched on this in our recent episodes, was so when I started getting into movie soundtracks in the 90s, really, I wasn't really into pop music or nothing. You know, pop music was always on the radio. Maybe you're watching MTV and stuff like that. You know, and I liked certain music, but you know, I started like collecting soundtracks, and this was, I think I had like Jaws 2 was the first I ever bought. Then I bought as I said before, I bought Terminator 2 and Batman, and then I bought the original Jaws, and then but this one here, I think this was maybe one of the next ones I bought. It was definitely one of the early ones I bought, and I used to listen to it over and over and over again. It is a great soundtrack, and well worthy of the best score at the Oscars.
Yeah, which, I was gonna ask you about this, like, as we got towards the end, because there's a lot of James Cameron and Academy Award stuff I wanted to ask you. No acting noms, I don't think there were nominations, no wins for sure. But that year, the Best Picture winner was Titanic.
Mm.
But I rewatched the one that was also a front runner that year pretty recently, which I think at this point, after rewatching them both, I could say I like more, which is L.A. Confidential. I don't know how you feel about that film.
It's a great movie. I've seen it once or twice many years ago. I haven't went back there again. Um, but you know, I think Kate Winslet was nominated, wasn't she?
She might have been. I know I'm
She
not
was.
100% sure of like the acting nominations. I know it won best score, which it absolutely
Yeah.
it's
Well,
not for me. It deserves.
at the time, Titanic was, I think, was joint highest nominated movie of all time at the Oscars, and then it won the joint most amount of Oscars of all time, tying with Spartacus.
It
Is
had to
that
win
right?
all the below the line stuff because of just, obviously with the way they're
Well,
combined with the effects and everything like that. It had to win. I assume it won cinematography. I would think that it had to have, right?
yeah. Do you know what? I when we're doing this show, I don't take any notes for it, but I know that it was. I think it was nominated for 14. It won 11. Right,
That's
and obviously
incredible.
when you've got best director and best picture in there, so
I'm the
he
king of the
whoever
world.
king of the world, he was embarrassed about that, and I think that probably one for things like um costumes, you know, production
Editing.
design, maybe. Yeah, if say that when production design and costumes, and then you've got the score. There's five already. So I'm not sure what the other ones are for, but listen, the categories are getting there's more and more categories every year as well, John. You know what I mean? From my point of view, you're saying about LA Confidential. From my point of view, I've never really went back and reflected on this year of the Oscars like I have done, say, in the
Mm.
70s, right? But I, for one, was quite happy that I'd done that because my pet peeve has been for years about the Oscars was why do they not recognize popular movies? And they
Uh,
recognized a popular movie.
Well, I wouldn't take it away from Titanic. I think now I enjoy LA Confidential more. LA Confidential wasn't a sleeper. It made over $100 million in 1997, so it was a popular film as well. Just not the most popular film of all time, but it's
Yeah.
just that this movie, like I was saying earlier, it's still an achievement in filmmaking, whereas LA Confidential is just it's a great story. Like, that's I love the movie in general, but this is one of those movies where, like, even in 1977, I would have gave it to like Star Wars, because it's like it
Mm.
took a leap in filmmaking, and you just can't deny like the special effect achievement and like the great direction. Like I said, like in like a scene when it's hitting the iceberg, like why is that scene still this good? Why does it resonate? Because it's well
Yeah.
directed. James Cameron deserved to win Best Director that year, and this deserved to win Best Picture. So it's kind of like even the 1994 where Forrest Gump won Best Picture. My second favorite film of all time is Pulp Fiction and lost
Mm.
that year. I would still give the Academy Award to Forrest Gump. Like, I think
Yeah.
overall it checks more boxes. It's more appealing. As a cinephile, it might appeal more to me. Pulp Fiction, LA Confidential might appeal more to me because it's like, as a film fan, but it's like, what movie did more for cinema? That should be the movie that does win the Academy Award.
Yeah, and I agree. That's what I think. I want to see popular movies do well at the Oscars if they deserve it, not just for being popular. As you
No,
said, it ticks all the boxes. Even watching this again the other night, even not this time when I was watching it for the pod, I thought there's a lot more cheesiness in this than what I
there
remember.
is. There's
Right,
a lot.
right. But I can forgive it for that because it's a phenomenal movie
Mhm.
and it's well directed. And I'm looking at, and I know how he, filmed a lot of this, in a big tank in Mexico, and he built the ship up on scaffolding, and it was designed to kind of start to dip into the water and stuff like that. It was probably done at a slower pace and then sped up on film and things like that. But just see, even having, hundreds of extras and actors having to actually, even
Dress
though
them up.
but even though it's in a controlled environment, but having to film them in the water and make it look dangerous and have it safe at the same time, all that kind of technical kind of stuff that they had, the thought process that they had to put in there to make sure there was nobody killed, and I think maybe Cameron learned a lot on The Abyss, but I know myself again for Spielberg says warned him when he started to make it, don't make a movie in the water, and because they know how difficult it is even in a controlled environment. So even from a tactical standpoint, it's a phenomenal movie. I will say this as well. I will say that I mentioned it on Jurassic Park, John. That I will say in my lifetime, there's been 4 movies that stick out in my mind, right, from when I can remember. Because like E.T. came out in '82. I can't remember that, right? But there's 4 movies, and there's 3 of them in the late '80s and 2 in the '90s, which to me were like pinnacles of the blockbuster era. And we had movies in between these movies that were a big deal, okay? But I don't class them as big a hits as these 3. So Batman '89, Jurassic Park, and Titanic. They were the 3 movies that I can remember when I was younger that were just total phenomenons worldwide that captured the imagination of audiences worldwide. Now you had movies in between that were big hits. You had like Independence Day, and you had the likes of like Batman Forever, and you had a few movies like that. And the 4th I would say is The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Okay, that
That's
that
the
that
big one of my childhood. I mean, I was 16, so it's not I was like, I was an
yeah.
older child, but like that was the one that I remember actually everyone being captivated by. And actually, where I would even say that the death of somebody actually even elevated to where more people actually had to see it, with Heath Ledger dying in that January. I think it kind of put it on even more people's radar.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I remember that when he died and stuff, and there was talk that they weren't going to release the movie and all this, and then there was all the talk about how playing that character was what killed him, and all this myth going on and all that nonsense. But the thing is, for me, those are the 3 movies that stick out to me, and I think the thing about Titanic, and I think the reason why it done so well at the awards season was because the whole story of this ship sinking, the whole class system, all the stories, it just the whole romanticized version of this tragedy. And I'm not talking about like Jack and Rose. I'm talking about the romanticized idea of being on this ship and what would you do to get off it? And like you said earlier, dying with honor and stuff like that kind of captured the imagination of everybody worldwide. And I think that's why they felt they had to recognize that.
Yeah, I think it does absolutely deserve the recognition. And my last question I actually had for you was this the peak of James Cameron's career, or did you say it was before this or even after with the Avatar films? Because don't forget, Avatar would end up becoming in 2009 the highest grossing film of all time, knocking his own film in Titanic. And then both Avatar films since have also been billion-dollar grossers. Now, me personally, I do not like the Avatar films, and I really have always been very disappointed that James Cameron kind of dedicated the rest of his career, which is almost 30 years now, to the
Mm,
Avatar movies, where he achieved this in 1997, and it's like he could have gone so many different ways. But in
mm,
the 13 years prior, he did the Terminator 2, which most people, including myself, regard as the greatest sequel of all time. Was that his peak, or was it right here making a four quadrant film that won Best Picture and became the highest grossing film of all time?
yeah. It's hard not to look at it to be the pinnacle of his career. I mean, okay, you can say Avatar's grossed billions, but it's never achieved the phenomenon that Titanic did. And even, I mean, Titanic was commercially successful. It was critically successful. It had both. It's very rare something like that comes along, and not only that, to be like the highest grossing, to be the joint one bit most Oscars. You, I mean, how can you get any higher than that? And I
Yeah,
don't, and I don't believe that it's his best movie either. Over the years, I go back. I mean, you could argue it's Terminator 2, but it's Terminator for me. I still love the original Terminator, and
oh yeah,
I love Aliens as well. There's times I think Aliens. I like Aliens more than T2, but I could be wrong there. But there's three best for me. I watched the first Avatar and didn't like it, so I've never watched any of the other ones. But I agree with you that I feel as if as a filmmaker, he's been wasted. But look, I just think that I know that this is something maybe we should have talked about as well, is that one of his conditions for making the movie was that he says he conned the studio. He always wanted the day going back to the start of the podcast when they discovered Titanic. He says that he once they discovered it, he was fascinated by that, and I think he may have even talked to Dr. Robert Ballard, who was one of the ones that actually discovered it. But his dream was to go down and visit it. And he basically conned the studio into funding him to go down and visit Titanic, right? Because he said, we need legitimacy in the movie. If we can actually film the real Titanic and put it in the movie, it gives it legitimacy. And they said, you're right. So see the start of the movie? So he got them to fund that. See the start of the movie. There's model work and there's footage of the real Titanic intercut together.
and again, seamless in that event because it's like very hard. But I always thought that was funny to hear that he actually did that. I heard that story about.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like what he kind of dedicated his life to since is basically like advances in technology and his work under the sea. He loves that kind of stuff. Like that's kind of, and I believe like he made all these films in the 13 years from Terminator to this movie. And then he basically in the next 30 years made 3 films. And I just feel like maybe he didn't care as much about like he achieved everything he wanted to achieve and he wanted to dedicate his life to doing what he wanted to do. And I understand that the Avatar films appeal to so many people, but it's like when you get to like your favorite director is also the guy who made your favorite film. And it's like, it's Steven Spielberg. And I my favorite film is The Terminator. And I can never really put James Cameron on a pedestal because like he for the last 30 years he's just done movies that I don't even like. Like I can't
Yeah.
even say like I enjoy them. I almost like forced myself to see the second Avatar film after being excited for the first Avatar. I went to a midnight release, like when they used to actually do those things. Now they fucking put them out on the Thursday before, like, and you could see it all day. And it's like, well, now it's just released on Thursday. It's like at Friday at midnight, you can go see it. I was excited to watch that 3-hour film, exhausted, and it was like a big deal. And I walked out, and my friends were like, "That was great," and I was like, I didn't like it. and then I forced myself to see the second one all those years later, almost the same exact feeling, and I didn't even go see the third. Like I still haven't, just because it's like I didn't like the first two, so why am I going to put myself through this? And it's like almost feels like a wasted opportunity, but I can't blame a human being for doing what they want to do.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say there as well, mate. Well, first of all, know how you know the difference between the model and the real ship at the start of the movie?
How?
Right. See when you see two mini
Submarines.
subs, two submarines, yeah, that's the model of the Titanic. But see when you see one, then that's the real ship.
Ah, didn't know that. Although I did kind
Mhm.
of notice on the 4K a little bit that it looked a little bit off with the two and the ship. So maybe I you can notice a little bit more on the 4K.
Mhm. And then the next that RV and all that was actually called Snoop Dogg because they were real. They actually used them. You hear it saying send Snoop Dogg in. You know, that he's seen all those RVs and went, oh, they can go inside. Oh, because he's all in the technology. He's all in the like. That's why he was fascinated with the Titanic. You know, the Industrial Revolution and shipbuilding and all this, and he's all into that. And that's probably why he's such a great director, and that's probably why he's so good at doing everybody else's job because he's
Mhm.
just into the. How do you do that? Let me know how to do that, and I feel as if then that's what happened when he went down that first time, or I think he went down 2 or 3 times maybe when they were filming for the movie. He got a bug, and he's like, "This is what I want to do." And when you've got millions in the bank, and you don't have to make another movie again, you can go and do what you want to do, and that's what's happened. And I almost feel as if he's only making Avatar movies to fund his next venture. That's what
Yeah.
he's doing.
I think he
He's not
likes the advances
interested.
in I think he likes those advances in technology and seeing where he can push the limits of it because he comes from that Robert Altman school. He's making these cheap movies, but like you said, he knows how to do everybody's job, and that's what makes him such a tough guy to work with because he can do it all. And it's like, yeah, he doesn't have to go ahead and freaking make a movie. And I think that's the difference between him and Steven Spielberg. Is Steven Spielberg is also a cinephile who loves making movies, and I think James Cameron kind of found something else that he loved, and he's like, I only got one life to live, and this is what I want to do, and I
Yeah,
respect it. It's just almost
yeah.
kind of like is as a fan a little disappointing.
Yeah. No, listen, I totally agree. And just you just on Steven Spielberg, I don't know if you've listened to the interview with Sean Fantasy yet.
Still haven't because I've been behind on all this
Yeah.
stuff, but it's on my probably tomorrow actually.
Yeah. Well, he asks him, if Fantasy says to him, you seem like you're always working. What do you do when you're not working? And I thought, well, he probably watches movies. But Spielberg went, well, he says, I've got a great wife who keeps me busy. And he says, I've got something like, I don't know, 10 kids or something. He's like 10 kids and I've 6 grandkids. And when I'm not working, I spend time with them. And there you go. That's basically his answer because he's he can spend that leisure time with his family. He doesn't have to go out. He doesn't have to go out and golfing trips or tour the world because he's toured the world already probably with making his movies. Or do you know what I mean? He's probably got a pool at his house and So Spielberg to me he's just a filmmaker through and through. He's just an artist through and through. He just wants to tell stories. Whereas I feel as if James Cameron has a wee bit more to not I don't mean more in a derogatory type of way. I just mean he isn't always just thinking about the movie. Whereas I think Spielberg's just thinking about movies all the time. You know what I mean? What's the next story you can tell? You know what I mean? He's thinking about his next movie before he's even finished the last movie. Whereas I think Cameron's a wee bit different. He was a truck driver, wasn't he? And then he's seen Star Wars, and that inspired him to want to go into movie business. And then, as I say, he's always had this fascination with technology. And then once he's seen the Titanic, he went, oh, that's what I want to do. And he's been doing that, a lot of that. But I understand from your point of view, from a film fan and a fan of the Terminator and a fan of his work, that you want to see him go back and make movies like that. I would love to see him go back and do movies like that as well. But this is the thing, John, this is one thing that I've learned the older I get. It's kind of like, yeah, what's he going to do? Terminator 3? I mean, I know we've had a Terminator 3, but say he makes another sequel to the Terminator. I mean, is it going to be better than what we've already got? It's kind of like
No.
I've got to the stage now where it's kind of like I'm content with Terminator 1 and 2. I'd love to see them make another great Terminator movie, and if he was able to do it, I would welcome it. It's the same with the Alien movies as well. All I need is Alien 1, Aliens. If someone came along and made another great Alien movie, okay, but nobody has, and that nothing's gonna change that. I don't know what you're saying. You're probably not looking at another Terminator movie or another Alien movie. You just want Jim Cameron to be making movies like he was making in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and honestly, no pun intended, but I feel like it's too late now. Like, and that ship has sailed. Like, it's 30 years, and it's like, could he go back and even do that now? Like, he had that run, he did it. I don't really think he could. I mean, I've seen it like with plenty of other people where they come back, and it's like it's not the same anymore. Like technology has changed, Hollywood has changed. Like, you left
Mm.
that 30 years ago. It's not going to be the same. So it's almost like it's kind of gone. Like I don't think he could. I just feel like looking back, it's like, what could we have gotten? You shouldn't do that with life in general. Like, look at like what we could have gotten. But it just always feels like because I like the other movies, like besides the Terminators and Aliens, like I like True Lies and I like The Abyss, and I just felt like he could have made more movies like that. And like after Titanic, it's like, you did all this and look how good Titanic is. Like what are you going to do next? And it's like, I'm not going to release a movie for 13 more years, and then I'll release another one 10 years after that.
Sorry, when you said there it's been 30 years, I just thought of the line, it's been 84 years. So I started laughing there.
Fucking long time not to talk about Jack.
I know. I mean, like, and yes, as she threw that in the ocean at the end, I mean, it still pains me. Like she held on to that all those years. I don't understand that, how she held on to that all those years and never told anybody and never talked about him. It's almost like a disservice to Jack, really, isn't it? Not so much about throwing the diamond away, but just not even mentioning him, even when she met her other husband. I was on the Titanic and I was with a fella and he died. It pains me. I'd like to talk about it now and again. Just kept it a secret. And as you said about the cheesiness, the lane she says is, and it's I just kind of go, oh God, it's cheese. A woman's heart is a I suppose a woman's heart is a deep pool of secrets or something like that. She says, and I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, he wrote that one down and he fucking thought he was king of the world that day. That's for sure. But it's like, Jesus Christ, man. But there's a lot of that cheese with her and everything. And that's the flaw. And I feel like that's honestly a James Cameron flaw in general when it comes to his writing. It's like, man, that's where a better writer could come in. But I don't take anything away because the film itself overall is fantastic. And it's funny, we got to wrap it up, but like James Cameron, like he achieved honestly what Steven Spielberg achieved in 1993, but he did it with one film. Steven Spielberg won all the Academy Awards for Schindler's List, got the highest grossing film with Jurassic Park. He just did it with one movie. And I guess you are the king of the world that at that point you can go do what you want, but it's it just always feels like a missed opportunity for me.
Well, first of all, I'll say is that another line she says towards the end is about just kind of like always kind of grinds on me, is kind of like, so you see, there was a guy named Jack and he exists now only in my memory. That's why I'm going. She's not telling the truth here. But there's a deleted scene or an alternate ending.
Yes, I have seen
and
that.
That's even more cheesier. When thank God, where she's about to throw the diamond overboard and they can run out and go, stop, don't do it, no, and as you were saying there about him becoming the king of the world. Yeah, listen, he actually says he's embarrassed about that speech at the Oscars.
People were pissed at him for that, actually, because they felt he was being arrogant.
Yeah, but I just think, and I think he said this too, I just think he was in shock because here's a guy here. This was a movie that he said that he just, had a dream of making. Right? He just want to make a Titanic movie. And we know James Cameron doesn't do things by halves. He'd done that with T2. And, this movie at the time, it's so over budget, it's so over schedule. It was kind of like Spielberg and Jaws. They were telling him that, he was finished and the movie's going to bomb and this movie's terrible. And then it becomes the biggest gruesome movie of all time. He wins 11 Oscars. Like, it's such a great success story for him at the end of the day. And I think he even sold his, didn't take a salary in the end. I think
he had to like pull that just to get it financed. Like, people just to keep them filming and everything like that. So yeah, he did sacrifice a ton to get it made. And then, it's probably like, everyone who doubted me, and he does that. Like I doubt him every time with the Avatar movies, and then they make $1 billion. So it's like, don't doubt James Cameron because he'll prove you wrong. And he always does.
Another thing too about that diamond. she says when she says, I want to see my picture. And then he says, about, you're wearing the diamond here, the heart of the ocean, And she says, I only wore that one time. It was a dreadful heavy thing. So you're telling me in 84 years, she's never ever decided just to put that on?
Never. Kept it fucking hidden away. And again, it's Cal's diamond. One thing I noticed this time also with that diamond is Cal's father put out the insurance claim on it. And so he got the money for it back anyway. So she's got it sitting there the whole time. I guess she never needed money, but it's just like I can never wrap my head around the fact that she's in love with this guy for the rest of her fucking life, and like has this whole fun. But it's like that was the one though. It was Jack. It's like I'd be like if I was the husband and I found, you never bring him up. You just hold on to this whole goddamn time, and it's like I'm not even the one. Like I hate the one got away.
Yeah, well, she dies and then she goes to Jack down in the bloody Titanic. What about
Her husband,
her granddaughters,
her kids,
grandfather, and the other kids? He's sitting in heaven waiting for her, looking down. Where are you? Oh Jesus, she's down in the Titanic with Jack. Who's this Jack fella?
And all the other people who died in the Titanic, she went right back. Like that was the defining moment of her life. Was 84 years ago. Everything that happened, I lived a great life, but man, I couldn't wait to get back to him and all of you guys. Yeah, and her husband's like, "Where is? I heard she died. Where is she?"
So what's that meme that I've seen before about sleeping with a homeless guy you've met after a day? Or something. Some memes used to fly
from the Terminator with that,
No, well, from the Titanic, saying about how.
Oh yeah, I know. She basically
imagine not telling your husband, your kids that you know what I mean. That you're in love with a homeless guy you met after one day.
Yeah, like Faith actually brought that up yesterday. Like Billy Zane's an asshole, but he's not wrong about some things. Like that is his fiance, and he's just down. She's just down there in the fucking poor part of the ship, dancing and having a great fucking time. That ends up fucking him. Yeah, he's gonna get mad at the very least about this whole thing.
but that crossed my mind when after that night where she's down in steerage and she's hungover the next day, obviously, because she's drinking those pints of Guinness, knocking them back, and dancing and all the rest, making a show of herself. And but she comes back up, and then he says about she says I'm tired, and he says, "Oh, your exertions below decks last night, no doubt." And she said, and then she says something about, "I'm your fiance," and I actually thought the same thing. I thought the cheek of her, that's his fiance, just running about with another fella down on the other decks. It's just the cheek to bring that up.
I know. That's what I mean. He has a right to be upset. He shouldn't hate her like that, but it's like she's going around and absolutely stepping out on him, and really kind of embarrassing him in a way, like making a show of it. And he's got a right to be upset. I get you didn't want to marry him, and the reason why you're doing it is because of your mother, but still, for his perspective, what a bitch.
He is a bit of a pantomime villain, but I meant to bring this up earlier. What do you think of his lapdog?
Oh my God, fuck him. What a dick that guy is, right? He's just the worst of them. And literally you are just his bitch, essentially. You're just Billy Zane's bitch the whole movie. Doing it, and he's down there with him, watching him while the ship is sinking. I'm like, what the fuck, man? This guy didn't really do anything too wrong that deserved this kind of death. He even kind of mocks him, I think this ship will sink. So you're just willing to let this guy die for what?
David Warner, you call him.
Yeah, David Warner, great actor.
David Warner, he's The Omen. But because he doesn't seem one bit concerned that this ship's going down. So maybe he's just that arrogant that he thinks he's going to get off the ship. Because when Carl goes down to the safe, they lift the money in the diamond, and he turns around and he lifts the money, he goes, "I make my own luck," and then he pulls his coat back and reveals the gun and says, "So do I." So what's he gonna do? Threaten one of the crew to get on one of the boats? He doesn't seem too panicked, even when everybody else is panicking.
Yeah, even when Billy Zane's giving the one guy the money and everything, he's just right there, and he's just still calm as hell. It doesn't really matter. He thinks that the gun's gonna save the day. It's a big fucking gun. I gotta admit that.
I didn't realize they had guns they got.
Me neither. It looks out of place. It looks like a gun from the 90s.
It does. Or the 80s or 90s, like a Beretta or something like that.
Yeah, it's got nice silver freaking finish on it and everything. I was like, damn, I'm thinking he'd have a 6-shooter, which he does have the 6-shooter too, but it's that gun is beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And of course that crew member you're talking about is Murdoch, which his family actually dispute that he committed suicide. And
really?
I think they sued Cameron over it, and he met them and apologized and says that he wouldn't have done it again. But there is witnesses that say that's what he done.
Yeah, he shot the guy and fucking probably thought, what have I become at the very last moment of this, and now I'll, make up for it. Salutes and kills himself. That's a heartbreaking scene as well.
It is when he shoots Tommy.
Yeah, because Tommy didn't do it. He got pushed forward, and this guy's just, but again, it just shows how the chaos in the moment, what people are pushed to do, when they're facing death.
Yeah, and that's the whole class system breaks down then, because you see when Billy Zane comes out and people are just banging into him, it doesn't matter at them at this point. You know, it's every man for themselves. It's the rats scurrying off the ship. You know what I mean? That analogy. But yeah, I love how Tommy says to him, "Give us a chance to live, you limey bastard."
Yeah. Which exactly. It's like I hate that though. All the rich people feel like, and like the one her mother just being like, oh, are they gonna be on the same boat as us? Fuck you. Like, yeah, I throw her overboard immediately.
Yeah, I actually, when they're out on the actual ships, or sorry, the actual rowboats, and they're watching the ship slowly go down. Some great shots there, some amazing shots of the ship in the night going into the water, and I believe that the camera was inspired by an artist. It was a Ken Marshall, I think. He wrote a book in the 80s, had all these beautiful paintings of the Titanic, the disaster, and he brought it into the executives as well at Fox and said, "This is what I want the film to look like." And but I just feel as if God forbid, if that was me in that boat and my daughter was on that ship, I'd be going out of my fucking mind. Her mum was just sitting there so calm, but I don't know if that's supposed to be a reflection of the time. And another thing too, why is she dressed like a leprechaun?
I thought I was gonna say a pilgrim. Like, what the fuck is wrong with her? Like the hat with the buckle on her hat. I
The
know.
buckle on the hat. It's probably just the style of the time, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure all the clothes are probably time accurate, but yeah, they dress like assholes back then. But yeah.
Apart from the tuxes, I like the tuxes.
Oh yeah, actually the tuxes look actually like Billy Zane's tux with the white tie. I'll be
Uh-huh.
honest, I actually really do enjoy his tux. It looks pretty damn good.
John, if you were wearing that, you'd almost look like a gentleman.
Almost like any room for a gentleman. I'd be like, yeah, fucking get off the boat, motherfucker. Yeah. Yeah. But I think we had a pretty good conversation on the Titanic today, don't you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, mate. But I just keep thinking of other things. I could probably go as long as the runtime of the actual movie, but I don't know. Maybe it's one we'll do on Let's Talk Movies podcast one day.
It was originally supposed to be on that, but we made a conscientious decision because it would have been a 6-hour podcast, probably.
Yeah. Well, we were before we decided to kind of create our own channel for between ourselves talk about movies. And I'm not sure if even Axis was formulated then. We were gonna do a 2-parter on Titanic in April.
It would be the only way we could do it. This couldn't be one show because it's a
No.
3-hour and 15-minute movie, and like just getting into the pre-production before we even got into the movie. There's a lot there too we could have just dove into. So
Yeah.
and then obviously the post-production and the amount of money and the awards, like it would have been a long, grueling process probably. And we decided to give it the Axis treatment, which had a lot of fun. There's a lot of things we could just talk about, but you're right, like we can go on and on about Titanic.
Go on. Thank God for Axis.
Yeah, thank God for Axis Cinema Appreciation.
Yeah, take me about a week to take notes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Since we did talk about Titanic today, I think we should tell good folks what we're going to be doing on the next episode of Axis Cinema Appreciation.
Yes, next episode of Axis Cinema Appreciation, we will be talking about the James Bond franchise.
Yes, which is both of and also the origins of our entire channel and our friendship really began with the James Bond franchise. So we'll get into all that.
Yeah, so we've got a wee bit of Bond coming up. We don't usually do this on Axis because we like to think of it as its own thing. But of course, we're going to be doing an episode of the Let's Talk Movie podcast on a Bond film, and then we will have Axis talking about the James Bond franchise, so they can kind of maybe link in and tie in together as part of our Let's Talk Bond.
Yeah, exactly. And our Bond as well.
Yeah, our Bond, very good, John. Very good.
Yeah, so make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe to this video and to the channel, and also check us out on Facebook, where David gives updates on everything that's coming down the pipe. So always keep an eye out on that. And obviously we would appreciate the sharing of this video, and give us a subscribe. I know like it's a little bit of it's kind of difficult to hit that button after you watch the long show, but we would really appreciate it. It helps YouTube to push our channel a little bit more, and we hope you guys are enjoying what we're doing here. And obviously, we'll catch you guys on the next episode of this show, the Let's Talk Movies podcast, and our live show. So we'll be seeing you around.